Sa ikapitong serye ng Freeing the Butterfly Within, ipinagpatuloy ni Brother Khalil Jaffer ang kanyang pagninilay hinggil sa mga adiksyon, mga pagkakabit sa mundo, pagdurusa at espirituwal na pag-unlad. Sinimula niya sa pagbabalik tanaw sa nakaraang gabi tungkol sa kung paano hinahadlangan ng mga adiksyon at labis na pagkakapit sa mundo ang ating espirituwal na paglago. Ipinaliwanag niya na mabilis tayong mahulog sa adiksyon sapagkat ang ating likas na hayop na pagkatao o ang tabi'a ay nakatuon lamang sa pisikal na kaginhawaan at kaligtasan. Hinahanap nito ang kaligayahan at iniiwasan ang sakit. Nananatili ito sa unang lugar ng ginhawa at umiiwas sa anumang pakikibaka. Inilarawan niya ito sa halimbawa ng isang batang natututong maglakad. Ang bata ay komportabling gumagapang at tumatangging maglakad sapagkat ang paglalakad ay may kaakibat na pagkatumba at pananakit. Subalit, kung hindi siya matututong maglakad, darating ang panahong ang paggapang ay magiging masakit at hindi sapat sa kanyang pagtanda. Ang bata ay walang malayong pananaw. Ngunit ang fitrah, ang banal na kalikasang nakatanim sa atin, ay may ganitong pananaw. Alam nitong darating ang panahong kinakailangan ang paglalakad. Gayon din naman, bagaman ang tabi'a ay naghahanap ng aliw at ginhawa, itinutulak tayo ng fitrah na kumalas sa mga adiksyon at bitawan ang labis na pagkakapit sa mundo. Alam ng fitrah na pagdating ng sandaling lisanin natin ang mundong ito at tumungo sa kabila, kakailanganin natin ang espiritual na lakas. Kung mananatili tayong gumagapang sa espiritual na antas, magdurusa tayo sa kabilang-buhay. Habang tayo tumatanda, napagtatanto nating palipat-lipat tayo ng kasiyahan, mula sa isang libangan patungo sa iba, mula sa isang ambisyon patungo sa panibago, mula sa isang relasyon patungo sa susunod. Ngunit wala pa ring ganap na kasiyahan. Marahil ang kakulangang ito ay dahil minsan na nating nalasap ang isang bagay na higit na ganap at higit na maganda. Tulad ng sanggol na unang lumalasap ng gatas ng kanyang ina, minsan na rin nating nalasap ang pagiging malapit kay Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sa isang diwa, tila tayo sabik sa kanya. Naghahanap ng pagbabalik sa orihinal na kalinisan na taglay ni Propeta Adan alayhi salam bago siya bumaba sa lupa. Binanggit ni Brother Khalil ang Surah Al-Infitar, Kabanata 82, Talata 6, kung saan tinatanong ni Allah ang sangkatauhan. O sangkatauhan, ano ang naglinlang sa iyo palayo sa iyong Panginoon? Hindi basta Panginoon, kundi ang iyong mahabagin at mapagkalingang Panginoon. Naghihintay si Allah sa atin. Ano ang gumagambala sa atin? Habang nagsisimula tayong kumalas sa mga adiksyon at alisin ang mga harang sa ugnayan natin kay Allah, nalalasap natin ang tamis ng kanyang banal na pag-ibig. Kapag minsan nang naranasan ang pag-ibig ni Allah, wala nang makapapalit dito. Nawawala ang hindi mapakaling paghahanap ng mas higit pa. Hindi na tayo pinatatakbo ng kasakiman o takot. Binanggit ni Brother Khalil ang tanyag na panalangin ni Imam Hussein a.s. sa Dua Arafah. Ano ang natamo ng nawalan sa iyo? At ano ang nawala sa nakatagpo sa iyo? Kapag natagpuan ng tao si Allah, wala nang tunay na kakulangan sa kanyang buhay. At kung hindi naman natagpuan si Allah, anuman ang matagpuan ay tila anino lamang at panandalian. Binigyang diin niya na ang mga imam alayhimussalam ay hindi hadlang sa pagitan natin at ni Allah. Sila'y mga guro na umaakay sa atin patungo sa Kanya. Natatangi ang tao sapagkat may kakayahan siyang makipag-ugnayan ng may kamalayan sa Kanyang manlilikha. Tinukoy rin niya ang panalangin ni Imam Zainal Abidin a.s. sa Dua Abu Hamza at Thumali, kung saan sinasabi na ang paglalakbay patungo kay Allah ay hindi malayo. Hindi kailanman nagtatabing si Allah sa kanyang mga nilikha. Sa halip, ang ating mga gawa at maging ang ating maling pag-asa sa iba maliban sa kanya ang nagiging tabing. Pagkatapos, ay hinarap ni Brother Khalil ang mahalagang tanong. Kung ang ating fitrah ay naghahangad kay Allah, bakit kailangang dumaan sa pagdurusa? Bakit kailangan ang sakit upang maging paru-paro? Ipinaliwanag niyang likas sa mundong ito ang pagdurusa. Ang nafs o tabi'a ay nagtatanong, bakit ako nagdurusa? Samantalang ang fitrah ay nagtatanong ano ang karunungan sa likod ng pagdurusang ito. Sa halip na magtanong ng bakit, marapat nating itanong ano ang aral o paglilinis na hatid nito.
Last night we talked about addictions and attachments and how they hinder our spiritual growth and evolution. And we said part of the reason we addict ourselves quickly is because the instinct nature, the animal nature within us that we call tabi'a, is very quick to form habits and to attach. And because tabi'a is only concerned with the physical body and with comfort and does not want any form of pain and constantly wants to fight for survival, it very quickly rests at the first place of comfort. It does not want to struggle. And this is why, as children, when we learn how to crawl, we do not want to walk. We have to be forced to walk. The child's tabi'a says, I am comfortable, I can move around crawling. Why do I need to walk? It is painful to walk. Every time I stand, I try to walk, I fall. My tabi'a says, I don't want pain, I want pleasure, I want comfort, I'm comfortable. What the child does not realize is that if they remain crawling, and they grow and become an adult without learning how to walk, when they become 20, 30, 40 years old, it will become a pain to move around the world crawling. Because tabi'a does not have foresight. Fitrah knows that I need to walk because this will be important to me at some point. It is for this reason that even though our tabi'a wants pleasure, wants physical pleasure, wants addiction, fitrah wants to break addiction, wants to help us detach from attachments, wants us to become spiritual, because fitrah knows that when we leave this world and go to the next, we will need to know how to walk. If we are still crawling, we will suffer in the hereafter. The other thing we saw as well is that the older we get, the more we come to this realization that we jump from one pleasure to another, from one hobby to another, from one dream and ambition to another, because nothing seems to give us that happiness that we seek, from one relationship to another. And this, we said, is perhaps because in our fitrah, in our origin, we have tasted something more perfect, more beautiful, more unlimited. And because, like Musa alayhi salam had drunk his mother's milk first, and we have tasted that, that is why nothing gives us joy. We are addicted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and now we are searching for that. We are trying to go back to that original state that Adam was in before he was sent down to this earth. And it is for this reason perhaps that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Infitar, chapter 82 of the Quran, verse 6, addresses us as a species. O insan, what is it that has deceived you from your Lord? What is it that is distracting you from your Lord? Not just your Lord, Rabbikal Kareem, your kind Lord, your compassionate Lord. He is waiting for you. What is it that is turning you away from this? And as we begin to separate from attachments and addictions, and we unclog that connection that is already there between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we begin to taste the sweetness of that. And once we experience the love of Allah, then nothing can replace that. We will not crave for any higher form of love or happiness. We will be able to continue functioning like others do, but there won't be this unhappiness, this constant wanting something more. We will not be driven by greed or fear. And it is this as well that we see written between, when we read between the lines in the adi'iya or the du'as that come to us from the ma'asumin alayhi salam, who are realized beings. For example, in the dua of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that is well known as the dua of Arafah, that he recited on the plains of Arafat when he had gone for Hajj on one occasion. In this, there is that famous line that many of you know, in which he says to Allah, my Lord, what did he find, he who lost you? And what did he lose, he who found you? What a profound statement. What Imam Hussein alayhi salam is saying is that, oh Allah, once a person has found you, there is nothing they will miss in their lives. What did he lose, he who found you? And if someone has not found you, my Lord, what did he really find? He is simply running from illusion to illusion. So this idea that Allah is too supreme for me to even comprehend or know or understand or come close to is false. The Imams alayhimus salam did not come to stand between us and Allah as obstacles. They came as teachers to help us connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what makes us such a special species. The fact that we can be special and can communicate with the Lord of the universe. No other species talks to Allah with such consciousness and awareness to their creator the way we do. In another dua from the son of this Imam, our fourth Imam, Imam Ali Zainul Abidin, salawatullahi salamu alayhi, and I think this is from the dua he taught his companion Abu Hamza Thumali, that we call dua Abu Hamza Thumali. In this, the Imam says, my Lord, the journey towards you is very short. It is not that far. It is an illusion to think that it is so far. It is very near, you are very close, and you are never veiled from your creatures. You are never disconnected from your creatures, except that what veils them from you are their actions for other than you. And then there is another version of this dua. In another version, it is said that the Imam did not say illa an tahjubahum a'maluhum dunak, but he said illa an tahjubahum a'malu dunak. In Arabic, amal with an ayn is action, and amal with an alif is hope. So this is even more beautiful, that the Imam may have said that, oh Allah, you are never veiled from your creatures, but what veils them from you are the hopes they have in other than you. So this is essentially a summary that where we stopped at last night. Now, what we want to do now tonight is take this to the next level and say, we acknowledge that our fitrah is longing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is our goal. He is our end. That is what we seek. And we need to awaken this fitrah. Now the question is that why is there so much pain and suffering in seeking this closeness to Allah? Why must we suffer to come close to Allah? Why is there a need for this pain and suffering in the process of becoming this butterfly? And we have already hinted at some of this in the previous nights when we talked about suffering. One of the things we said is it is the nature of this plane of existence that everyone suffers. And as long as we stay in this cycle of asking, why must I suffer, we will not evolve, because it is tabi'a that wants to flee from physical pain and seek pleasure. It is tabi'a that asks, why am I suffering? Whether I'm suffering physically in an illness or I'm suffering emotionally in a relationship, it is tabi'a that asks, why am I suffering? Fitrah does not ask, why am I suffering? Fitrah seeks the wisdom behind the suffering. And therefore, I am not saying that tonight when we talk about pain and suffering in the process of becoming enlightened, I will tell you why you suffer in whatever method you have found your life to challenge you. I cannot be audacious enough to say, I know the cause of your suffering. But what I will attempt to do is shift our perspective and our attitude so that at least instead of asking, why am I suffering? We ask, I accept that life is suffering. I simply need to find out what is the wisdom behind my suffering. Perhaps, I have some addictions in life which are separating me from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this suffering and this calamity is a jolt to wake me up so that I detach from those addictions and thereby return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is for us to discover. And I said, you are the best person to know what is the wisdom behind your individual suffering. We suffer in two ways. Sometimes we suffer through pain, and sometimes we suffer because we are not able to get pleasure.
Inilarawan ni Brother Khalil ang dalawang uri ng pagtitiis. Pagtitiis sa sakit at pagtitiis laban sa pagnanasa. Ayon sa karunungan ni Imam Ali alayhisalam, ang pagtitiis laban sa pagnanasa ay higit na dakila kaysa pagtitiis sa sakit. Kapag tayo'y nasa sakit, madalas ay wala tayong magagawa kundi tiisin ito. Ngunit kapag tayo tinutukso ng pagnanasa, may pagpipilian tayo. Maaari tayong magkasala. Ang pagpili ng pagpipigil alang-alang kay Allah ay may mas mataas na timbang sa kaluluwa. Ipinaliwanag niya na kung lubos tayong nakikilala sa ating katawan at damdamin, nagiging mahirap ang paglaban sa tukso. Ngunit kung babaguhin natin ang pananaw, sabihin may galit sa loob ko, sa halip na ako ay galit, nagkakaroon tayo ng pagitan sa ating sarili at sa ating damdamin. Ang ganitong paglayo ay nagbibigay lakas sa disiplina ng kaluluwa. Gamit ang talinghaga ng uod na nagiging paru-paro, ipinaliwanag niya na ang pagbabago ay nangangailangan ng pakikibaka. Ang muling pagsilang bilang paru-paro ay hindi pinipili ng uod. Ito'y nagaganap sa kalooban ni Allah kapag handa na. Kung bubuksan ng maaga ang bahay uod upang tulungan ito, lalabas itong mahina at hindi makalilipad. Ang pakikibaka ang bumubuo sa kanyang mga pakpak. Gayun din, ang pagdurusa ay hindi kalupitan. Ito ang paghubog ng mga pakpak.
In a hadith that is in Nahjul Balagha from Amirul Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, he says this, patience are of two kinds, patience over what pleases you and patience over what pains you. And then he says, bearing patience over what you desire has more value than bearing patience over what pains you. Why? Because when you are in pain and when you suffer, there is nothing you can do about it except bear patience. What will you do? You might get a little depressed, you might get upset, but there isn't much you can do except bear patience. But when you are overcome with desire, you have a way out, except that that way out is haram. So now you have a choice. So when you bear patience over desire and you choose not to give in to temptation, then your patience has higher value because you have an exit. You could commit sin if you want, but you have resisted it for the sake of Allah. Therefore, that patience has even higher value. Okay. So we're looking at it from both perspectives. And that is why we also mentioned in one of the early nights that when our young men and women ask, why is it so hard to resist temptation? We said it is actually not hard to resist temptation. It feels hard because we are completely identified with the body. Because we are completely thinking, I am the thinker in my head. So we are convinced from a tabi'i perspective that I need this pleasure. I have to give in to this temptation. And that is why it feels like if I don't get it, it is painful. But if I disidentify from the body, if I see myself as being a soul in an alien body, then now I don't think of the pleasure as me. I think of it as something within me. In other words, instead of saying I am angry, if I was to start saying there is anger within me, it is simply words, but it shifts my perspective. Because now I don't identify with the anger. I say, I am not angry. I am a spiritual being. There is anger in me. I am not depressed. There is depression in me. I am not desireful of something. There is desire within me. The moment I do that, I create some space between me and that feeling and that emotion. And that takes me now, gives me the courage to resist and to have the right patience. So when we are moving from being a caterpillar to a butterfly, there are two things that have to occur. One is the struggle, the labor, just like the caterpillar that pushes and pushes and has an exoskeleton and keeps trying to come out of its shell. The other is the rebirth that occurs. The rebirth is not up to us. When we are ready, it happens by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even the caterpillar does not choose when to be born again. So in the same manner, when we choose to evolve spiritually, we find a prescription for ourselves, then we struggle day by day by day by day. That is the labor, that is the pushing, that is the methods we seek. And then when the time is right, there is a sudden collapse of the ego boundary. There is an enlightenment that fills our lives. Now, we still ask this question, but why must it go through a process of suffering? Why could I not become enlightened without suffering? You see, if a butterfly had human intellect, the butterfly would ask the same question. Why must I struggle and shed my exoskeleton and sleep in that chrysalis for 8 or 10 months and go through all the chemical changes and deconstruct and reconstruct before my wings can grow? Why? But let us think of the opposite for a moment. Let us suppose we saw this caterpillar in its chrysalis hanging from the stem of a tree, and we felt sorry for it, and we felt compassion and said, the poor creature is struggling and struggling and struggling. Here, let me help it. And then we take a surgical knife or a box cutter or whatever, and we slit the chrysalis open. Are we doing it a favor? What is going to happen? Because it is not ready to emerge from its shell, because it has not finished struggling as much as it needs to struggle for the wings to develop, we cripple it for life. It will never become a butterfly. Now it will remain a deformed worm that will burn in the sun and die. So we have not been fair, nor have we been kind and compassionate by interfering in that process. That journey of struggle was very important in the formation of the wing. It is for this reason that Allah wants you to experience what your mind and your ego and your tabi'a thinks is suffering, but it's not actually suffering. It is the growing of wings in us. And it is for this reason that we must shift our perspective. And we have been quoting a verse of Quran from Surah Al-Inshiqaq, chapter 84, verse 6. Ya ayyuhal insan, O men, again Allah is not addressing Muslims, all of our species. Ya ayyuhal insan, innaka kadihun ila rabbika kadhan famulaqih. O man, O insan, you are constantly laboring with a severe laboring. Towards whom? Towards your Lord, and you shall meet him. But we don't understand. We still say, why? Allah's aim is to take us to Jannah. Jannah is an abode of perfection. To live in that, to survive in that, we must become perfect beings. And Allah will do anything possible to get us there. If we, by our own volition and choice, will not stand up and begin struggling spiritually, and doing jihadun nafs and tazkiyatun nafs, then Allah may, I'm not saying this is the only reason we face calamities, but He may give us calamities to force us in that direction. Because this is temporary. Allah does not care whether you live 40, 60, 80 or 100 years. Because He knows you're in a shell here. This is a cage. You are not free here. He wants you for there. And He will do whatever is necessary. Try you in any manner possible until you make it very clear to Him that you are not interested in Jannah. We are told that on one occasion, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he was seen smiling. His companion said, Ya Rasulullah, what is it that makes you smile? He said, a thought crossed my mind. I am amazed at people who have to be dragged in chains to go to Jannah. I am amazed at people whom Allah has to tie in chains and drag them to Jannah because they don't want to go to Jannah. How many times have you and I almost come close to committing a major sin, but Allah saved us? How many times have we thought of saying something or doing something that we would regret for the rest of our lives, but Allah saved us? Because we are asleep, listening to tabi'a, like animals, just heedless. And when we are not yet ready, Allah, out of His mercy, keeps pulling us back. In Surah Al-Isra, which is chapter 17 of the Quran, verse 11, He says, when men praise, he does dua for evil as he ought to have done for good. And that is because he is of a hasty nature. He wants it now and he wants it now. Allah is saying this, that you are praying to me for evil as you ought to have prayed for good. How many times have we prayed for things that were destructive for ourselves or for others? We are in a relationship we're not happy with. Oh Allah, just kill him or just kill her. Right? He prays for evil when he should have prayed for good. Allah has put you in a situation where you're meant to learn and grow. But your tabi'ah doesn't want pain. It only wants pleasure. So I don't care what you do, Allah, just fix it for me. Why? Because man is hasty. He has no patience. It is this tabi'ah nature that wants things now and wants it now. It is almost impossible to go to hell. You really have to struggle hard to go to hell. If only you listen to your fitrah. And the first step is changing our attitude towards suffering and calamities. Accepting that suffering and calamities is very important in our evolution. The only people, my dear brothers and sisters, who don't suffer in this world are the people of hellfire. They are the people who get their share of reward and comfort and ease in this world so that there is nothing for them left in the hereafter. Otherwise, every human being that you see suffering, whether he is Muslim or non-Muslim, Allah's intention by that is to bring him towards his fitrah, to bring him towards tawheed, to bring him towards himself. So when Allah has chosen you, that means you are special to Him. That is why you are able to do that good thing. That is why when you seek something that has to do with the hereafter, which is in its essence good, and you see the path being opened up for you and it is becoming easy for you, it is because Allah holds you special in His eyes. And that is why He is using you to do that good instead of using anyone else. Now let's go back to our discussion on suffering. The other reason that we said suffering and calamities is important in our spiritual evolution is because sometimes we think we have made it. When life is comfortable, no one knows what their real value and what their real ability or capacity is. We only know ourselves when we experience suffering. When life is good, even an atheist does good. I have known and heard and read of atheists who say, I can do the same good that you who believe in God does without believing in God. You give charity. I am a philanthropist. I have given millions in charity and I don't believe in God. I am doing good only for the sake of goodness. So where is the difference between the goodness you do and the goodness that the atheist does? The difference is when calamities befall. The way you behave and the way he behaves will be different. You believe in the hereafter. You believe you have a soul. You believe there is a Lord watching you. So when calamity befalls you, you stand with courage. The atheist does not believe life has a purpose. The atheist believes here he is by accident. The atheist believes there is no value in life or life after death. The atheist believes he is just an animal. So when a lot of calamities befall him and it is too painful to bear life, he does not see the purpose of life. He commits suicide and kills himself. So you begin to see the difference only when calamities befall. Even in Karbala, and this is, I'm not coming to Masaib, but in Karbala, when you read the books of Maqtal, you will see there are places where Imam Hussein alayhi salam looked to the heavens and said, Oh Allah, this musibah is easier for me because I know you are watching me. In particular, when his baby was hit with a spear, when Ali al-Asghar was hit with a spear, he looked to the heavens and said, Oh Allah, this is difficult for Hussein to bear, but it has become easier for me to bear because I know I am under your watch and you are a witness to what I am going through. So knowing Allah is present in our lives makes that difference. Suffering doesn't just bring out our true colors in the negative sense, in the sense of how bad I am or how weak I am in my faith. It also brings out the good in me. For example, we have a hadith that says, whoever dedicates himself sincerely to Allah for 40 days, concentrating, focusing in his spirituality to Allah only, then springs of wisdom will burst forth from his heart and begin showing on his tongue. This is a very popular hadith. What does this tell us? This tells us that wisdom is already there in our hearts. This hadith does not say that whoever dedicates himself for 40 days to Allah, Allah will give him wisdom. It says wisdom will burst forth from his heart out onto his tongue. So each one of us is a sage. Each one of us is enlightened in potential. Each one of us knows the truth. Each one of us has wisdom. But it is latent, it is sitting, it is sleeping, it needs to be awakened. What does that 40 days of spirituality do? Fitrah reigns in tabi'a. It controls how much you eat. It controls how much you sleep. It controls your remembrance of Allah. It controls your distraction with the world, your addictions. And in doing so, in that hardship, wisdom begins to emerge. So hardship and suffering reveals beauty as well. It brings out good as well in us. And therefore suffering tells us who amongst us is gold, who amongst us is silver, who amongst us is brass and copper, who amongst us is mud. You may have heard the saying, people are like tea bags. You only know their strength when you see them in hot water. Think about that for a moment. Hot water meaning calamities. That's when you'll know how strong this tea is. And a very similar concept comes to us in a hadith from Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayh. He says, it is in the changing of circumstances that the essence of men is revealed. When you are poor and you become rich, then your essence will show. When you are rich and you become poor, when you are healthy and you become sick, when you are ill and you become healthy, then your true color will show. Were you ill, constantly praying to Allah, when you became healthy, you forgot Him? Were you rich, when you became poor or lost your job, you despaired and lost hope? Were you poor and when you became rich, you became arrogant and miserly? So you don't know your value until circumstances change in your life, this way or that way. In an Islamic understanding, bala or suffering or affliction is not always in the negative or in the sense of loss. Sometimes health can be bala if it takes you away from Allah. Sometimes acquiring a lot of money can be bala if it takes you away from Allah. Anything that distances you from God is an affliction and a suffering, even if the rest of the world says it is a blessing. And anything that brings you close to Allah is a blessing, even if the rest of the world say it is an affliction and a suffering. So Allah's yardstick is very different from ours. Now, you may have guessed by now that fitrah does not see physical suffering as a problem. Fitrah sees physical suffering and calamities as simply a training ground, a learning. It is tabi'a, which is only concerned with the pleasure of the body and fleeing from the pain of the body, that sees suffering as a disaster. Or the ego, for example, might see it as a disaster. Now, I had mentioned to you a couple of nights back that I will talk about this hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in which he said, وَجَنَّةٌ لِلْكَافِرِ. This world is a prison for the believer, for the faithful, and a paradise for the faithless. Now, what do we understand from this hadith when we hear this? A lot of people interpret this to mean that it is a prison for the faithful because we are restricted with the laws of halal and haram. The faithless can do as he pleases. I cannot. There are so many things the faithless does I would love to enjoy, but it's haram for me. The faithless gets to sleep in the morning. I have to get up and pray salat. It's hardship. So it is a prison because I endure the hardship of halal. But that is not true for a mu'min, because the Messenger of Allah, peace be on his family, did not say ad-dunya sijnun lil muslim. He said ad-dunya sijnun lil mu'min. For a mu'min, obedience to Allah is a pleasure, it's an honor. He loves his salat, he loves fasting, he loves doing halal. He is disgusted by haram. So he does not feel he is imprisoned by having to do halal and keeping away from haram. What is the other understanding? The other understanding is, well, the faithful suffer afflictions in this world. But afflictions is suffering only for one who is tabi'a driven. For a mu'min, afflictions is a blessing, it's a gift from Allah. It is a reminder, every time he suffers, he turns to Allah in supplication. So that cannot be the explanation. The only explanation you will find is the literal meaning, that a mu'min's soul is caged in this body, whereas he wishes to fly free and transcend and soar in the heavens, in the malakut as-samawat. And that is why, by choice, a mu'min would always want to be in the next world. He stays here for as long as he needs to either develop his soul or to help others develop their soul. And as soon as we have attained perfection, Allah does not want us to suffer meaninglessly. As soon as we have accepted and embraced suffering as not being evil, and we have purified and grown our wings, then Allah will do one of two things. He will either take us away from this world, and we will not want to come back, or He will keep us if He wants to use us to help others grow their wings. But other than this, there is really no place or room or purpose or joy or pleasure for a mu'min to abide in this plane of existence. And that is why some scholars say that Allah, out of His mercy, has intentionally hidden paradise from us, because if we could see paradise, it is so beautiful that our souls would not be able to remain in the body. So we see this world and we are mesmerized by it, but in reality it is just shadows, illusions. It is not even a tip of the iceberg compared to the real world. And that is why Allah keeps saying, you prefer the life of this world, the hereafter is far, far better, and it is everlasting. Now, so we need to transcend suffering, and we need to look at life and death very differently, and we begin by seeing ourselves in an alien body, and seeing that our assets are in the hereafter, not in this world. And everything we possess, we need to look at it from that perspective. I have wealth in this world. It is just lying in the bank. When I die, my heirs will take it. How can I take this world in the hereafter? I use it for khairat, I give it in charity, I help an orphan. By doing so, I transfer it to the hereafter. That's where I want my assets. On the day of judgment, I don't want to give accounting for my wealth and stand under the hot sun. So Imam Ali alayhi salam says, he says, if you don't want to carry all this burden with you on the day of judgment and stand there for a long time giving accounts for the millions you have, get someone else to carry the burden for you. How? Give it in a good cause, give it in charity. They will carry it, you will take it on the other end. So we have to have this perspective that when I give for the hereafter, I'm not losing, I'm gaining. The only way to overcome the fear of death is to be convinced you've got nothing to lose. But this will not happen by simply sitting at home and saying, I've got nothing to lose, I've got nothing to lose, You have to work at it. If you can bring yourself to a status where you are convinced, I have got nothing to lose because I have built my hereafter. Now there is no reason to fear death. That will automatically take you to fitrah. And if we don't, we will still have to surrender this body at death. But now, it will be a panic. It will be a soul being pulled out violently from the body. The ego will say, I don't want to die. The worm will say, I don't want to leave the cocoon. But Malakul Maut will come with that surgical blade. He will cut open the cocoon and say, it's time to leave. Whether you grew your wings or you did not grow your wings. At that point, we will try to pretend we have wings. But there won't be any wings because we cannot fly if we have never grown something. And Allah shows us this in Quran, that when you die, you will not deny the truth. So you might as well acknowledge it now and work for it. In Surah Yunus, chapter 10 of the Quran, verse 90 and 91, he talks of the time when the Pharaoh or Fir'aun is drowning. Until when Fir'aun was drowning, he began saying, I believe now that there is no God except the one in whom the Banu Israel believe. And I am the first to submit. I am from the Muslimin. He used to call himself God. He used to say, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la. Now he says Muslimin. Allah answers Fir'aun. Now, in other words, you can fool everyone. You cannot fool yourself and you cannot fool Allah. Now, after all the transgressions you did, after your absolute refusal to develop your wings, and you are a mischief maker, you are a worm. So now saying La ilaha illallah, how will you become a caterpillar? You see, you can't escape from Allah. So that is why there is a saying, Allah grants respite, but He does not forget. He is not in a hurry. If you wrong me, I want to get you and avenge myself as soon as possible because you might disappear, you might run away, you might change your identity. Allah is not in a hurry. Take 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Where will you run? If we live the life of a worm, we will die like a worm, begging not to be taken out of the cocoon. We will either die begging not to be taken out of this cocoon, or we will pretend to have wings and say, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. But at that point, Allah will say to us, Al-an, وَقَدْ عَسَيْتَ مِنْ قَبْلُ وَكُنْتَ مِنَ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. So this is very, very important that we do not neglect this idea of struggling towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Binanggit din niya ang Surah Al-Isra, Kabanata 17, Talata 11, na nagtuturo na ang tao ay nananalangin minsan para sa masama, gaya ng kanyang pananalangin para sa mabuti, sapagkat siya ay padalos-dalos. Madalas tayong humihiling ng bagay na makasasama sa atin nang hindi natin nauunawaan ang magiging bunga. Ipinagkaiba niya ang pananaw ng mananampalataya at ng hindi naniniwala sa gitna ng pagsubok. Kapag may pananampalataya, nagkakaroon ng kahulugan ang pagdurusa. Kung wala ito, maaaring manaig ang kawalan ng pag-asa. Sa trahedya ng Karbala, pinahayag ni Imam Hussein alayhisalam na ang kanyang pagdurusa ay gumagaan sapagkat batid niyang nasasaksihan siya ni Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ang kamalayan sa presensya ng Diyos ang nagpapabago sa anyo ng pagdurusa. Sa huli, nagsalita si Brother Khalil tungkol sa kamatayan. Ang tanging paraan upang mapawi ang takot ay ang maging panatag na walang tunay na nawawala sa atin, sapagkat ang ating tunay na kayamanan ay nasa kabilang buhay. Ang anumang inialay para sa kawanggawa ay naililipat sa walang hanggan, at ang hindi ay nananatiling pabigat. Nagbabala siya na sa sandali ng kamatayan, nawawala ang pagtanggi, hindi maaaring ipagpaliban ang katotohanan hanggang sa huling hininga. At tinapos niya sa paalala, nagbibigay si Allah ng palugit, ngunit hindi siya nakakalimot. Ngayon ang panahon ng pagpapausbong ng mga pakpak. Ang pagdurusa ay hindi pagkawasak, ito'y pagbabanyuhay. At ang paglalakbay patungo kay Allah, bagaman puno ng pagsisikap ay humahantong sa walang hanggang kalayaan. Maraming salamat sa panunood. Kung nakita mong kapaki-pakinabang ang content na ito, huwag kalimutang i-like, i-follow at i-share. Sama-sama nating buuin ang isang komunidad kung saan lumalago ang mga ideya at naipapalaganap ang inspirasyon. Malaki ang nagagawa ng iyong suporta. Tuloy-tuloy lang tayo, isang click sa bawat hakbang.